Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
Hello and welcome to the On the Record podcast. I'm Sam Hardiman of the Daily Memphian. Today I'm joined by Council Vice Chairman J.B. Smiley Jr. Councilman, thank you for being here.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for the opportunity.
So before we start with heavy political stuff, I would love you to tell listeners about an episode of your life involving basketball in your semi-pro basketball career. And so, first, how long were you playing basketball?
I don't know when to start. From 5 until forever.
So, but where did you play semi-pro?
So, I was first, I was in, Avon Park, Florida with the Heartland Proud. I'm pretty sure my dates are wrong at this point. Heartland Proud in the ABA. Then I did professional show basketball with an organization called the Harlem Ambassadors, which is essentially you going city to city, state to state, and you're playing, I guess, local celebrities, the local politicians in the game of basketball. We always win if you don't know how these goes. And then I went to Mexico for a bit, which was a completely different time in my life. Good times, though. Good times, learned a lot, but I understood quickly the value of the United States of America.
And so, as a semi-pro basketball player, what's the lifestyle like? Like, where are you living? How are you getting to games? You know, what's recovery like?
So it depends on, what particular league you're playing in. So my time in the ABA was completely different than my time, doing professional show basketball or my time in Mexico. So my time in the ABA, you're essentially in a house with other players and you wake up, you eat, you're not training as much as, some of the professional players, but you're training maybe once a day. Really simple life. But you're always trying to find a way to supplement your income because you're not making much money. Professional show basketball, it's covering everything. It's all your travel. You're living in a hotel. It's all of your food. All the money you make is essentially what you pocket. Terrible lifestyle if you want to have some form of personal life because you're on the road about 6 to 8 months out of the year. And then when you're playing in overseas league or in a different country, you're living in a hotel. Most likely, I lived in a hotel. The hotel, the hot water went out around 8 p.m. every night. So if you came home late, you're taking a cold shower. It's just a completely different culture.
And so what brought you back to the United States and away from the semi-pro career? What made you give it up? How old were you?
See, I had to be because I started law school right when I started law school, probably about a year after I returned. So I had to be like 24-ish.
How old are you now?
35.
35.
It's been that long. Wow. haven't realized how long it's been since I actually picked up a basketball in a competitive way.
And so what did it teach you? What did that teach you?
Resilience. Resilience. I think, as a person who's trying to make his way in professional sports, you're going to have shortcomings. You're going to come up short, but it's all about, how you bounce back and how you navigate difficult circumstances. So, just being resilient and keep on staying focused on whatever your goal is.
What drew you to the law?
I knew it was going to happen. I think the same thing that drew me to basketball is my mom. She would I would come home. She would be sitting in front of a TV. And one particular time, it was Johnny Cochran on TV. And who is this guy? She was like, he helps people. And I said, yeah, that's the guy I'm going to be. I do not practice criminal defense law, but I ended up becoming a lawyer. And the same thing with basketball. It was, my mom watching then the Memphis State, Larry Finch Tigers. And it was, what is this? I'm really interested. Then I started trying to figure out how to play.
Give me an NBA comp for you. Give me a comparison.
I can't say what I want to say because he's hurt right now. Chauncey Billups. I show up in the big game. I'm going to make the big shot. I don't have to be flashy, but I'm going to get the job done.
You got big arms.
Oh, yeah, definitely big arms. Shout out to Chauncey Billups. Big shot, Bob.
Well, so, recently you ran and you saw the Democratic nomination for governor last year. You came up about 1,500 votes.
1,468, but I'm not counting.
No one's counting.
I am every time.
And so what could have gone differently? What could have gotten you another 1,500 votes?
I think for me, when you look at the political landscape, and I tell people this, I think at some point the city of Memphis has to flex its political muscle. And the city of Memphis can only flex its political muscle if we stay unified. And what you saw in my particular race is I overwhelmingly won Shelby County, but there were a few political operators who lost sight of the goal, which is to move Shelby County forward. And they went with another candidate they were not familiar with and ended up, losing by 1,468 votes, which is not even it was an extremely close race.
And so those political operators, would you mean Representative Parkinson?
Absolutely.
And what about two of your colleagues on the city council?
So I say this. Antonio Parkinson was the mastermind, and he had some help. He had help by Tammy Sawyer. He had help by Representative Tory Harris. But, there are two members of my council who I don't know what particular role they played in it. But, one donated to me. The other one told me they're going to support me. But I do know prior that they were intimately a part of Parkinson's network.
And so, how do you respond to that?
You don't. I mean, what I've learned about, being resilient and moving in political spaces, people will not always do what you expect them to do. And you have to be okay with it. You have to be able to say, okay, this time you didn't do what I believe to be what's right or what's proper or what I believe to be what's necessary to move the community forward or particularly Memphis forward. But you always have to figure out ways you can work with people you don't necessarily agree with all the time. And I've been able to do that pretty well on the council.
So you're not holding a grudge?
I don't hold grudges against anyone but Antonio Parkinson.
Okay. And so recently you traveled to Washington, D.C.
Absolutely.
That was part of the National League of Cities, right?
Absolutely. It was a really good experience.
And so let me ask you about a selfie you took during that experience.
I took a lot of selfies. Which one are you talking about?
The one outside Senator Blackburn's office.
Oh, yeah.
So why did you take that selfie outside her office?
Well, I think when you're in positions, you need to be available. And, Senator Blackburn was a no-show for the delegates of the Memphis congregation.
And why was she a no-show? What reasons did you all get?
No reason whatsoever. And I can opine that she doesn't necessarily agree with our politics. I can opine that she doesn't want to meet with Democrats. And I can opine that she understands that, our agenda in terms of putting Memphis and Shelby County in a better position is not her agenda. I think the only time she talks about Shelby County is on 901 Day, and the community really went after her.
And, you frequently sort of subtweet Senator Blackburn. Is
Absolutely.
That fair?
I subtweet Senator Blackburn frequently.
And so why do you chirp her so much?
Because she's absolutely terrible. I think her legislation, along with members of the Tennessee GOP, I think they forget that the role of government, which is to put people in a better position, which is to provide for the general welfare of the people. I can put it in the same category as Cameron Sexton, and I put it in the same category as some of the more far-right Republicans we have in the state who forget that people should always come first.
And she's up for re-election next year.
Absolutely.
Will you be on the ballot in the Democratic primary?
I will say this. That's a good question. I'm considering it.
What would be the gating criteria for yes or no in that decision?
There's a lot of things you take in consideration because when you run for statewide office, there's a toll on your family. I was essentially, other than, council meeting the day after council. I was essentially on the road. I wasn't working. It requires a lot of resources in your personal life, but also requires, some people to step up for you. And it's difficult when you're living on the road and you're always campaigning, and you also have responsibilities to the people of Memphis. And traveling to Bristol, Tennessee one day, having a community conversation, and then the next day you have to be back in Memphis, Tennessee, because you're serving the people of Memphis, and you can never be derelict in your duties in that capacity. It's tough. So I think that's one thing you would take in consideration. Two, you got to determine whether the state is really ready to move in what I believe to be a more positive direction. I think we have a United States Senator who has lost her way. If I could be direct, I'm not sure she ever knew which way she should be going, other than, spewing foolishness throughout this country. And I think we need a senator who respects people, who will move us in a more positive direction when it comes to sensible gun regulation. And I think we need a senator who understands that people, not pharmaceutical companies, not the NRA, not other politicians, but the people, the folks who vote you into the office, and even the folks that don't cast the ballot, should have a say-so in how our state and our country should be governed.
And to follow up on something you said about campaigning and the demand that it takes, right? You're running for re-election right now. And if voters were to put you back in your seat at City Hall, would you think it would be fair to them to essentially 6-7 months later start campaigning again for another race?
I think that's a very good question. What I've heard consistently everywhere I go, I think what the people in Memphis and the people in Shelby County consistently tell me, there's been polls run about my favorability, and it's because I consistently show up. I'm extremely present. Some of my colleagues tell me I'm too present. I'm extremely accessible. And what they want from me, I also have to make sure it's aligned with, what my family wants. Because at the end of the day, I'm still someone's son. I'm still someone's brother. I'm still someone's uncle. And I hope to have, a personal life that I can actually enjoy myself. So I take that into consideration. But if you go out in the community, they're going to tell you they have other aspirations for me. They want to see me in other positions. They want me to serve well while I'm here, but they have greater aspirations. Yesterday, literally, City of Memphis employee walked up to me and called me mayor. And I've heard Senator Smiley. I've heard Congressman Smiley. I literally hear different positions every single day. And, I jokingly say, I'm going to retire tomorrow. And everybody looks at me and say, get out of here. That's not happening. And we won't let that happen.
If it's not the Senate race, would you consider a challenge to Representative Cohen in the 9th Congressional District?
Well, this is how I always make my decisions. I don't make my decisions based on how long a person's been in office. I ask myself whether I think that person has been effective. Do I think they have advocated in a very zealous manner for the community or the constituents they've been charged to represent? And whether I think the community needs a new direction. Like, you have to ask yourself those questions. And then after you ask yourself those questions, you have to take a hard look in the mirror and ask yourself, well, can you do a better job?
So that didn't really answer my question. Do you think you could do a better job than Congressman Cohen?
I think very highly of myself. I think I very highly of myself, not because I think I'm the smartest person in the world. I just thought I've never met a person who worked harder than I do. Again,
not quite the answer to the question, but we'll move on. And so let's turn a little closer to home and to events of really recent weeks and months. And so the Memphis City Council passed, I think it was a week ago now, a pretextual stop ordinance that essentially is an ordinance that says MPD do not use, pretextual basis for traffic stops. And that would, if that had been on the books and that had been followed, Tyree Nichols would likely still be alive. This week, there was news in this paper and others that a young man was stopped for a cracked windshield, which is not a part of the ordinance at this time, and he was beaten by MPD. His family says, activists say. What was your reaction to that news?
Well, I think the first time that I actively learned of it, you hear there's a lot of negative media, a lot of, killings and different things in the media. First time I actively heard it and, sat back and said, okay, let's figure it out was, this past Tuesday at the council meeting. And for me, I was like, let's get more information. So we have an ordinance on books, which was a part of the litany of pieces of legislation we passed targeting criminal justice reform that now allows the council attorney, along with the chief security officer, to gain access to body cam footage, dash cam footage, any footage that's available to Memphis Police Department to determine, what transpired. But, that's one thing. So we will get that. We will figure out what actually transpired because there's a difference. And we know sometimes police officers are not truthful in their police reports. And we know that. And, people don't generally always tell the truth. And sometimes something may appear to be different than, what you thought transpired. So we have to figure out what actually transpired. But it is somewhat troubling that the initial stop may have been because someone had a cracked windshield. And when I think about the city of Memphis, a large percentage of the people who live in the city of Memphis are at or below the poverty line. I think we have to stop, policing folks because of their poor. We should be aiming everything that we do at putting people in a better position. And, I think one of the acts of the folks in the community who came to the council, particularly talking about this situation, is can we amend an existing ordinances to say, that deal with pretextual stops to also include car windshields. And I think the council has a duty when the community asks them something to take a strong look at, see if it's feasible to add this, it's feasible to amend this. And you have to determine, as Councilman Jones say, it's the will of the body. You need 7 votes to get it done. And once I get more information, I think I would, advocate for whatever position I believe to be what's right and just.
When would you expect to receive the body cam footage from MPD?
Now so I talked about it with Chief Security Officer Cedric Young and Attorney Wade. The ordinance says they must give it to us, but I'm not sure the ordinance specifically says the timeline. So what I think we're going to find out now is we may need to go back in a minute and put a definitive timeline or iron out what our internal process is to get access to that footage. But I do not believe that the MPD will have serious delay in releasing that footage to us. After all, we are the legislative body and we can pass laws that tend to make it hard for them to do things that we believe is injurious to the people.
And so on that front, in terms of passing laws, what do you make, the city council has budgetary power. They have to approve. The mayor
Absolutely.
Can propose any budget he would like, and it's really up to the city council to approve it. The mayor has proposed a 14% raise for MPD and for the firefighters, the fire department. What do you make of a 14% raise for MPD?
It's a lofty goal. I think it's a lofty goal. And also, it's not necessarily a 14% raise. 14% raise in name only. It's converting funds that they're receiving as a retention bonus already to permanent funds that they're going to receive going forward. So it's not necessarily really a 14% raise, but it is a significant increase in terms of how we appropriate dollars. But when I say it's a lofty goal, because he made a statement that he's going to do this without increasing taxes. There is no way possible to do this without increasing taxes unless you're going to say in a city that's saying consistently that we need to invest more in parks so that we have community programs for the young people to utilize. Unless you're going to tell them that their community centers don't matter. I had a conversation, a line of questioning, I think at the very first budget meeting or the most frequent budget meeting, particularly about parks being closed at 5:00 during the summer. And I was like, I asked them to give me an answer, and then I did get the answer. Yes, there will be parks, community centers closed at 5 p.m. during the summertime. And at that point in time, where will the youth go? So I pushed very strongly for us to have adequate funding so those parks and community centers can stay open. We have to give young people an opportunity, and the opportunity doesn't look like just keeping the community centers open. We have to provide programming for them, making it enticing, make them feel like that's where I want to go. They ultimately will have to choose to come, but we have to have the programming in place that say, hey, this is the place to be.
Would you support raising taxes to pay for more park funding or higher police salaries?
So I think it's necessary. If we look at the level of service that we're receiving in the city of Memphis, I think several council members, you hear it's not a D or R thing at this point. It's we want better services. People want their trash picked up on time. People want better roads. People want programming for the young people in community centers. People want these things. But also, people want to feel safe in their homes. Whether policing actually reduces crime, that's an entirely different argument. But whether police make folks in our community feel safe. For a large percentage of people, having more police makes them feel safe. But there's a group, a segment of our population who have a completely different opinion. But there's no one way to fix it. But I think it is a totality that ultimately gets us to our goal, which is creating a safe, vibrant, and a community that actively encourages young people to be involved in different programs as opposed to being out in the community doing things they shouldn't be doing.
So the mayor, about 3-4 weeks ago, sat in, I think, the exact same chair you're sitting in.
It's a good chair then.
And he was asked about, at that time, Councilman Carlisle's proposal to raise taxes for raises for MPD and the fire department. And he noted the size of the Memphis tax rate. Essentially, like every municipality in Shelby County, you pay a Shelby County millage on your house and you pay whatever municipality you're in millage on your house. The one in Memphis is considerably higher than those of the surrounding suburbs. And so would you be concerned about raising property taxes on people who are largely below the property line? A lot of them. Mm-hmm. Do you think they can afford it to raise taxes for higher services?
I think so. I think raising taxes is a very sticky issue because, we talk about the property rate of the city of Memphis, but we also talk about, less than stellar services. I think Mayor Strickland ran his campaign on being brilliant at the basics. And in my mind, the basics are police, fire, sanitation. We're not doing very well. If we're not doing very well, and what MPD tells us, they say, hey, we need more officers. What fire tells us, they say, we still need a little bit more. We're having a hard time recruiting. What sanitation tells us is we just can't get people to take these jobs. And we can't get people to take these jobs. We're not able to meet our routes. We're not able to meet our services. And all three of the entities, which what I would consider being brilliant at the basics would consider, tells us we need more. How do we provide or put ourselves in a position to give them the resources they need so they can do more? There's no way with our budget that we can do more unless, and that's where I think we find ourselves now, unless we're saying, hey, sanitation, y'all are not on the same par as police and fire. Unless we're telling, the folks in the engineering department, they're not on the same par as police and fire. Unless we're telling the folks who work in the community centers, they're not on the same par as police and fire. If you look at our current, essentially $790 million budget, you look at police, you look at fire, you're talking about a significant portion of our budget. Then the next thing is 6% of the budget. So having somewhere the kids go does not matter to the people in Memphis. I think if you poll that particular subject, everyone will tell you our kids deserve a place to go. Our community should stay open, and we need to have programming. I think if you see, I was born in the 80s. I was born in 87. I grew up in the 90s. Celebration Station, Excite, Liberty Land, Adventure River, the Mall of Memphis. Matter of fact, there was a lot of things for young people to go and do. Now, where are these places for young people? If private industry is not investing in the city of Memphis, the city of Memphis has to take an after role. And we can do that by providing programming for parks. What I think you will see in this particular budget, and I'm looking forward to getting the budget today, is it was titled the Budget of Resurgence. When we get done with it, it'll be called the council's budget. We're going to take a very active role in budgeting for the very first time since I've been on this body. And I think it would probably be more active than probably within the last 10 years.
And that's an interesting point. I'm glad that you kind of went to the water there, so I don't have to lead you there.
Lead me.
Yeah. So the city council has typically, since you've gotten on the body and before that, while I've been in the city of Memphis covering City Hall, has not been very assertive with the budget? Largely, the mayor has presented it. There have been some tweaks. There have been maybe some pet programs for city council members that have been funded. And there hasn't been a lot of, maybe as you just motioned, a rubber stamp a little bit. Why now? Why be more assertive now? Is it because the mayor's on his way out? Is it because the relationship with the mayor and the council is less than what it once was?
No. So I think you're looking at, several different things. For me, it's not just one thing. It's a totality of circumstances. So maybe for some council members, maybe the fact that the mayor may be on his way out. But I really think the large majority of the council members, Chairman Jones campaigned on this. He said, we need a third term because it takes some time to learn how to do this job. You have a full-time administration, but you have a part-time council. That means the council members do not have enough time to have a full-time job and learn everything about city government to figure out how to get dollars, how to move money around, how to handle an entire budget that you don't have enough time. You don't have an adequate staff to help you go through these things. But what you have now is first-term council members toward the end of their first term. You have veteran council members toward the end of their second term. Majority of the council members understand the power, the influence that we have. With 7 votes, the city council can move City Hall to Carterville. With 7 votes, the city council can completely change this budget to a budget. Not saying that the current budget is completely off, but it's not the council's budget. The council at this point will use its power, use its legislative ability, its budgetary ability to create a budget that's more reflective of what the council believes the city needs. So you will see parks go up from 6%. It's at 6% now. It will not look like it at the end.
And so to move to another matter, which you've been following closely, you've been, beyond your job as a lawyer, which is largely in courtrooms and briefing documents. You've been spending some time in Chancellor Joe Day Jenkins' court, watching the hearings.
It's a fine judge
in the residency case and the ongoing dispute about what the Memphis City Charter says. And so I'll ask you, Councilman, though you've said it before, what is the residency requirement for mayoral candidates in Memphis? Is it 5 years?
There is no residency requirement for the mayoral candidates. It's clear. But the problem with it all is when you have politics mixed with the law, you get a conundrum of a lot of things that are not necessarily legal.
Could you elaborate a little more? What politics are mixed in here?
Everything. Sam, this is a really good question. I enjoyed this one. So you have individuals who are supporting I'll put it this way. You have top tier candidates. Some of the top tier candidates have not lived in the city of Memphis for 5 years. So it's advantageous for other candidates or supporters of those candidates who are not in the top tier of candidates to push for a 5-year residency because it would eliminate some of the top tier candidates, meaning those individuals who are polling well. Not saying I like any of those individuals, but saying those individuals are polling well. If you eliminate those individuals who are polling well, candidates outside the top tier candidates have a legitimate opportunity to become mayor of Memphis.
And so are you saying, for example, Paul Young, who's the Downtown Memphis Commission CEO, he would benefit from eliminating former Mayor Harrington, potentially Shelby County Sheriff Floyd Bonner, and Van Turner, former Shelby County Commissioner from the race?
I think that's a misconception. Misconception about, so I'm going to address the short answer to your question is yes, Paul Young would benefit, but he's not the only person who would benefit. I think the misconception when people talk about residency, they say Floyd will be gone. They say Floyd will be gone. They say Van Turner will be gone. And people say Harrington will be gone. The truth of the matter is, if you look at it with a legal perspective, Mayor Harrington will meet the residency requirements. At all times, he's paid property taxes in the city of Memphis. At all times, he's owned a home in the city of Memphis. At all times, he's paid an MLGW bill in the city of Memphis. Whether he owned a parcel in Carterville, who cares? Because the only thing that really matters is, will he meet the legal definition of residency? Mayor Harrington will meet the legal definition of residency. So we may anticipate that, Bonner or Turner may be eliminated. But Mayor Harrington, whether it's a 5-year residency or whether there is no residency at all, which I believe the law is today, until we change it soon, Mayor Harrington will be in this race.
And so, speaking of the change of the law, which is going to be on the ballot next year, you and others have sponsored and passed a referendum for August 1st of 2024, which would ask voters to implement and amend the city charter for a 2-year residency requirement and lower the age to be mayor to 18. Why institute a residency requirement at all?
We don't have one. I'm very vocal, and I often wear socks that say choose 901. I will believe that every individual who says he or she wants to represent the city of Memphis, you should live in the city of Memphis. You should choose 901. And you choose 901 not just with your official capacity. You choose 901 by calling Memphis home, by making Memphis your home. And I think and the ordinance, the referendum is not just about me saying there should be a residency requirement because, it was one that I proposed and found co-sponsors for. It's not just me saying that the mayoral candidate should choose 901. I'm saying the city council, who does not have a residency requirement, should choose 901 as well. It's a 2-year residency for the mayor. It's a 2-year residency for the city council members. I think you have to have a vested interest in the city of Memphis in order to represent it. It's hard to have a vested interest when you don't live in the community. And I'm the same council member who pushed for a residency for our police officers. I'm hearing that MLGW is going to put forth, and this is for President McGowan and Gail Jones Carson and everyone at MLGW. They're going to be putting forth ordinance before us, a resolution before us to allow their employees to live anywhere they want. I'm going to push for keep it the same because their employees should be living in the city of Memphis. Choose 901. If you don't choose 901 and you want to work here, you find somewhere else to go. But choose Memphis every single time.
So, Councilman, what would you like to add? We've covered a lot of ground here.
I think the most important thing for me when having conversations with people is active participation. We spend a lot of time talking about what we want to see, and people in general, about what we want to see in government, what we want to see with the budget. But when it comes time to budget, I'm going to leave here and I'm going to go to a budget meeting. I'm going to be looking at the city administration, my council members, and maybe 1 or 2 people who are concerned. If you want your voice heard, at some point you have to show up. Email your council members, but show up as well. Let your council members know what you want to see. But not just your council members. There's someone on the 7th floor as well. Mayor Strickland and his team need to know what you want to see. All we can do is advocate for the things you would like to see. But if we don't know them, we're guessing.
And so you brought up an interesting point. You mentioned active participation. I'm 30. You're 35. I'm paid to watch what city government does. You are
it's pretty boring at times, I'll say.
Your words, not mine. And you are a member of city government. What more can be done to get our generation and the generation below it, because you and I are not super young anymore, to come out and vote and actually participate in city elections?
Well, one of the things, and I'm anticipating, I hope I'm wrong, please make me wrong, general public. I'm anticipating about 100 to 110,000 people participating in the mayoral election. We have a city over 600,000 people. We have to do better. One of the things that I sponsor, I think my 2nd year on the council, I was like, well, every new person who comes to the city of Memphis, they get an MLGW packet. Let's not give them, let's also include an MLGW packet or welcome to the city of Memphis packet. Here is a voter registration card. Register to vote. But I think when you're dealing with younger voters, we don't vote simply because it's our civic duty or it's our right. I think we're more issue-focused voters, and I think we have to do a better job of speaking about the issues that young people care about. And it's not just showing up during election time. They have to know you. I laugh about this, but one of my friends had a fight party. We go watch a fight, and some of the people who've never seen me before, they were happy to see me. And then the comment was made by my friend that we're voting for Councilman Smiley. One of them says, why? And I'm like, oh, somebody's asking me why they should vote for me? And it's a group of young people, and I literally had to sit down and have a conversation with the dude, and he was like, okay, you have my vote. I said, so you didn't vote for me before? I was almost offended. But I think those are the type of conversations that matter to young people. You got to sit down. You have to have intimate conversations about the issues that matter to them, whether it's community policing, whether it's environmental justice, whether it's, efficient use of resources. The issue changes per person. And if you don't have those conversations, you will lose a lot of voters. And I think the turning issues in this particular city election will be who's actually engaging. I think you're going to have a very strong constituency from, in particular in the mayor's race, you have a very strong constituency from Mayor Harrington. You have a very strong constituency for Bonner. Turner is going to have a strong constituency. And Joe Brown. Joe Brown has a strong constituency in terms of name ID. But the person, and, Paul Young is working on it. Corvette is working. I think the person who wins this race is the person who touches more people and have those intimate conversations with folks. And if no one does that, you're going to get the same old.
And so to ask one more question along participation in general, in the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you have supported a partisan city council.
Absolutely.
Right now we have a nonpartisan city council. You are a very clear Democrat. Councilman Frank Colvette, who you just mentioned, has been a longtime member of the executive committee for the Republican Party in the state. But y'all are both nonpartisan on the city council, and everybody is. Would you think we would have more participation in municipal elections if there was partisanship?
That's an interesting question. I never really thought through it, but off the top of my head, I don't necessarily know it changes anything. I think without candidates that truly reflect the community, without candidates that can get folks excited about going to the polls and vote, I don't think it really changes anything in terms of participation. I think that's all on the candidates. That's all on the time they spend in the community. But what I do believe partisan elections will allow the city of Memphis to do is establish itself as a city that is truly run by Democrats. People talk about Memphis being, this very progressive, this very democratic city, but our city government is not necessarily that way. Our city government is, there's a lot of Republicans in our city government that take positions that may be inconsistent with what the people of Memphis would typically vote for. And folks don't know it. I think, there's a place for partisanship. I ran as a candidate for Democratic governor. But what I do believe to be the most important thing is whether you have a D, R, or nonpartisan by your name, still being able to say, here's the issue. You may not agree with me on it, but let's figure out how we can come to the middle, how we can move our community forward. And you always have to choose. If you serve in this county, serve in this city, you always have to choose the people first.
Thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.